The world was in shambles after World War II. Countries were devastated, economies were shattered, something had to change. Enter the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, in 1948. It was meant to be a temporary fix, a band-aid on a bullet wound, but it surprisingly worked. The GATT fostered cooperation, reduced trade barriers, and set the stage for global economic recovery. Fast forward to 1995, and the GATT morphed into something bigger, bolder, the World Trade Organization, the WTO. The WTO inherited the GATT's mission of free trade, but with more muscle. It had a broader scope, covering services and intellectual property. It also established a powerful mechanism for resolving trade disputes, the Dispute Settlement System, or DSS. The WTO's creation was a watershed moment. It promised a level playing field for all countries, big or small. The rules were clear, and the enforcement mechanisms were in place. For once, it seemed like there was a global sheriff in town to ensure fair play in international trade. But as we know, promises made are not always promises kept. The WTO, while noble in its intentions, has stumbled. The very system designed to uphold fairness has become a battleground for powerful nations to exert their dominance. The dream of a truly equitable global trading system remains elusive. The crown jewel of the WTO was undoubtedly the DSS. It was designed to be the ultimate arbiter of trade disputes, a neutral ground where countries could resolve their differences through a rules-based system. No more backroom deals, no more strong-arming weaker nations. The DSS promised transparency and fairness. Here's how it was supposed to work. A country files a complaint against another for violating WTO rules. A panel of experts is assembled to hear the case. After careful consideration of evidence and arguments, the panel issues a ruling. If a country is found to be in violation, it must comply with the ruling or face trade sanctions. On paper, it sounded like a dream come true for developing countries. They finally had a platform to challenge the economic might of developed nations. The DSS was supposed to be their David versus Goliath slingshot, and for a while it seemed like it was working. Developing countries, emboldened by the DSS, started winning cases against developed countries. They challenged unfair subsidies, discriminatory tariffs, and protectionist measures. The DSS was living up to its promise as the great equalizer, but the winds of change were blowing. As the years passed, the initial optimism surrounding the DSS began to wane. Developing countries, while initially enthusiastic, found themselves facing new hurdles. The cost of litigation at the WTO skyrocketed, making it prohibitively expensive for cash-strapped nations to even consider filing a complaint. The legal complexities of the DSS also posed a significant challenge. Developing countries often lack the legal expertise and resources to navigate the intricate web of WTO rules and procedures. They were outmatched by developed countries with their armies of trade lawyers. And then, there was the issue of bias. While the DSS was designed to be impartial, there was a growing perception that it favored developed countries. The appointment process for judges, the composition of panels, and even the interpretation of rules seemed to tilt the scales in favor of the wealthy and powerful. The result was a steady decline in the participation of developing countries in the DSS. The very countries it was meant to empower were being priced out, outmaneuvered, and increasingly disillusioned. The DSS, once hailed as a champion of fairness, was facing a crisis of legitimacy. Enter Donald Trump, a man who viewed trade not as a win-win, but as a zero-sum game. His America First agenda put the world on notice. The era of American generosity and global trade was over. Trump's weapon of choice? Tariffs. Trump's trade war with China was a defining moment for the WTO. He slapped tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, triggering a tit-for-tat response from Beijing. This trade war sent shockwaves through the global economy, disrupting supply chains, raising prices for consumers, and fueling uncertainty. But Trump's assault on the WTO went beyond tariffs. He crippled the appellate body, the WTO's highest court, by blocking the appointment of judges. This effectively paralyzed the DSS, leaving it unable to issue binding rulings and enforce compliance. Trump's actions were a direct attack on the rules-based multilateral trading system that the WTO represented. He viewed the WTO as an impediment to his America First agenda, a constraint on his ability to dictate terms of trade unilaterally. The consequences of his actions would be felt far and wide. Section 5. The Fallout, a World on Edge. The trade war unleashed by Trump had a ripple effect across the globe, impacting not just economies but also political relationships, social stability, and even the environment. The world was witnessing a full-blown pestle crisis. Political trust between nations eroded as alliances fractured. The United States, once seen as a champion of free trade, was now perceived as an unreliable partner, willing to weaponize trade for its own gain. Economic global trade flows were disrupted, leading to slower economic growth and job losses. Developing countries were hit particularly hard, as foreign direct investment dried up and their export markets shrank. The trade war fueled social unrest in many countries, as workers faced layoffs and consumers grappled with rising prices. The economic anxieties exacerbated existing social divisions and contributed to a rise in populism and nationalism. The trade war spilled over into the tech sector, hindering innovation and collaboration. Countries, suspicious of each other, hoarded technological advancements, slowing down progress in critical areas like renewable energy and climate change mitigation. The trade war had unintended consequences for the environment. Countries focused on economic survival, rolled back environmental regulations and prioritized short-term gains over long-term sustainability. The weakening of the WTO created a vacuum in international trade law enforcement. With no effective mechanism to resolve disputes and ensure compliance, countries were left to fend for themselves, raising the specter of a chaotic and unpredictable trade environment. Section 6. The price of protectionism. America's losses in the trade war. While Trump claimed his trade wars were making America great again, the reality was far more nuanced. The United States economy suffered, American influence waned, and the country found itself increasingly isolated on the world stage. The tariffs imposed by Trump hurt American businesses and consumers alike. Domestic manufacturers faced higher input costs, forcing them to raise prices or cut jobs. Consumers felt the pinch as tariffs on Chinese goods drove up the cost of everyday products. The trade war also damaged America's reputation as a reliable trading partner. Countries, wary of Trump's unpredictable policies, began to diversify their supply chains and seek alternative markets. The United States, once a dominant force in global trade, was losing its edge. Perhaps the most significant consequence of Trump's actions was the weakening of the rules-based international order that the United States had painstakingly built over decades. By undermining the WTO, Trump ceded ground to China, which seized the opportunity to position itself as a champion of free trade and multilateralism. Section 7. A New Hope. Can the WTO be saved? The WTO, once a symbol of hope for a fairer and more prosperous world, stands at a crossroads. Crippled by internal divisions, external pressures, and the legacy of Trump's trade wars, its future hangs in the balance. But amidst the gloom, there are glimmers of hope. Reform efforts are underway, spearheaded by WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a seasoned economist and diplomat. Her focus is on revitalizing the DSS, restoring its credibility, and making it more responsive to the needs of developing countries. One key reform proposal is to address the issue of high litigation costs. This could involve creating a legal aid fund for developing countries, providing them with the financial resources to access the DSS. Another proposal is to streamline the dispute settlement process, making it faster, simpler, and less expensive for all parties involved. Beyond procedural reforms, there's a growing recognition that the WTO needs to address substantive issues that are at the heart of current trade tensions. This includes updating existing rules to reflect the realities of the 21st century global economy, such as e-commerce, digital trade, and climate change. Section 8. The future of global trade cooperation or chaos. The world stands at a critical juncture. The choices we make today will determine the future of global trade for generations to come. Will we retreat into protectionism, fueling division, conflict, and economic stagnation? Or will we embrace cooperation, revitalizing the WTO, and forging a more equitable and sustainable global trading system? The path forward is clear. We must resist the allure of short-term gains offered by protectionism and reaffirm our commitment to a rules-based, multilateral trading system. This requires strong leadership, political will, and a shared understanding that global challenges require global solutions. The WTO, despite its flaws, remains our best hope for a fairer and more prosperous world. Let us seize this opportunity to reform, revitalize, and reimagine global trade for the 21st century and beyond. The alternative, a world divided by trade wars, distrust, and economic uncertainty, is simply too bleak to contemplate.